Hey, hi, how are you? Today, I'm going to attempt to make Claire Saffitz's Apple Tart, which is a recipe that I've had my eye on for ages because, number one, it looks absolutely incredible. The second reason is because I have this absolute fascination with making puff pastry. That's the really technical, incredibly involved, and time-consuming recipe that you have seen on the Great British Bake Off, that you've seen Claire make. It's what you need to make croissants, which I've done before. And everybody hates it. I love it. But I've never tried to make rough puff pastry, which is the quicker version that is much preferred. And that's where we're going to begin, by making the rough puff pastry. In general, I'm a really big fan of weighing ingredients like flour or sugar. I just feel like it's much more accurate. And so I started the rough puff pastry with 455 grams of all-purpose flour, to which I added 2 tablespoons of sugar and 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. Make sure you're using the right salt. If it's not kosher, it's going to be all kinds of messed up. Then it's on to the butter. You need 170 grams of unsalted butter that's going to be from the fridge, and then an additional 170 grams of unsalted butter that is from the freezer. The fridge butter gets sliced into these little squares and then goes back into the fridge. Then you grate the frozen butter on the biggest holes of a box grater straight into the flour. Claire makes a great point of coating the butter in the flour before you start, and I found that to be really helpful, especially just when gripping that really cold butter. That was very helpful. Once all of it's grated, you can go straight in with your hands, make sure it's all covered with flour, and then add in the slices of butter and then do the same thing. Now, when it comes to adding water to pie dough or doughs like this, the general philosophy is that you want to add the least amount of water that you need while still making sure that the dough is sufficiently hydrated. So usually that just means you're gonna add a little bit of a time, mix it in, see how you go, and add more if you need it. Following Claire's instructions, I started with a 1/4 cup of ice water, which I mixed in, used a fork to kind of mix it around to make sure it was hydrated, and then employed this method that Claire shows in her video, which is taking the dough, sort of pressing it back on itself so that it can begin to come together and hydrate. I definitely recommend removing your jewelry if you wear any before doing this step. As it starts to come together, you're gonna be able to lift out these shaggy bits of dough and then add more water. And that's just so that the bits that don't need hydration don't get overhydrated, and the bits that do get more water. Fold it into plastic and then use the tension of the plastic to roll it into a slab-ish shape. All right, switching gears, we need to move on to the apple compote because that is going to cook and be hot and then needs to completely chill before it can bake with the tart. The apple compote begins by adding 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 50 grams of dark brown sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, and some vanilla into a medium saucepan. All of that is brought together over medium heat while you peel and cut up 3 of your cooking apples. Once the butter sugar mixture cooks for a little bit, you're gonna add the apples to it. And here's where I made maybe a mistake, I'm not sure. Claire says in her video to cook this for 8 to 10 minutes, but then a second later she corrects herself and says that you should add the apple cider to it first. I paused the video and just cooked mine for 8 to 10 minutes, and then when I press play again, I realized the mistake. I don't think it's gonna make that much of a difference, but obviously you're living in the future and I'm living in the past, so I can't really be sure. And then you're gonna cook this until the mixture is reduced by half and the apples have that translucent quality to it. Then mash with your potato masher and continue to cook it until it really has driven off a lot of that liquid. I'm gonna set this in the fridge and then get back to work on my pastry. So a final roll out for this, and then I'm gonna cut it in half because this is actually 2 portions. Wrap one of them in the remaining plastic that I have, pop it in the freezer for another day, and then this other one is gonna get rolled out into roughly the dimensions of our tart, put onto a sill pad, and then go into the fridge to chill out until we are ready to move forward. So I'm just gonna try and eyeball some straight lines here. And now with a beaten egg. Do a little border. Oh, I was supposed to dock it. Okay, let's pause and dock. In quarantine, I made Claire's Pop-Tarts from Gourmet Mix, and they came out beautifully, and it was kind of like this. Okay, back to the egg wash. And then back in the fridge to chill. Now that my compote has cooled, it is time to move on to the assembly. I just preheat my oven to 425 degrees, and while that warms up, I'm just gonna get a couple things ready. So first, I'm gonna take 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of apple cider, melt those together, and that's gonna serve as my glaze that will go on top of the tart. Next, I'm going to thinly slice the remaining 3 apples and keep them together so that they can fan out on top of the tart easily. Good to me. I'll just have a taste test. Okay, so now I'm going to take my apples and fan them a bit, and then they're just going to be laid on top of the tart, kind of going in all different directions. We are ready just for the apple cider and butter glaze that's going to go on top of the apples. Claire explains that this is going to get a blast of heat. So it goes into the 425 degree oven, but then you're instantly going to turn it down to 350 and then bake for 40 to 55 minutes. There is one more glaze that we want to prepare, which is the apricot glaze. This is going to go on after the tart comes out of the oven. Now it's time for my favorite part, the tasting and the grading with my live and taste tester. Taste tester, hello!
Hello!
Thank you for joining.
Happy to be here.
How good does this look?
Pretty effing good. That's a good looking piece. That's a thumbnail piece right there.
It's beautiful.
Listen to
this
the
is
sound.
A stunning dessert.
Which microphone is being used here?
Right here.
Listen to this, people. If that doesn't get your ASMR tingling, I don't know what does.
This is so good. It's the perfect amount of sweetness, amazing apple flavor, great textures.
This is through the roof delicious. It's the only apple dessert I've ever had that I like. The only nitpick I can think of at all is that it's a little messy to eat.
I wonder if a knife and fork situation would have been better.
Maybe.
And I think if you served this at a party, just go with that.
How critical do you think it is that before you baked this, these were like world-class apples? These were like some of the best apples I've ever tasted.
Good ingredients matter. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we use really nice eggs, we use really nice butter, really nice vanilla. All of these things I think do add to it. And I think if you made this outside of apple season with frozen apples or however they store them so that you can get apples like in March, I don't think it would be as good. Okay, let's go to my favorite part, the grading.
Oh. Sorry. I don't like apple desserts. It's still a no.
It's absolutely
It's
no.
really, really, really good.
So good. Another like killer Claire recipe. She's so good, man.
And also, we didn't mention this earlier, a good size.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to be stuck with that for like 3 weeks trying to eat a piece every day to get rid of it.
Absolutely. Oh, for outstanding. I'm gonna make this again. I'm gonna make this again tomorrow.